There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Now, normally I try to be high energy when we first start because they tell you online that that's the way to get people's attention, to be high energy, just to come in. Hey, everybody, how you doing? But I'm a little low today. Got my booster shot this afternoon, just a couple hours ago. I was supposed to get both the booster and the flu shot. But the Rite Aid I went to was out of the flu shot. You can see it's Rite Aid because it says Rite Aid. We got the little Rite Aid symbol on the, there we go, right there on the bandage. Yeah, and they tell you, well, you know, you're supposed to sit in the waiting room for 15 minutes and see if there's any side effects before you leave. I told the guy, well, I'll do that in the greeting card section because I need to pick up a card for Lisa because she's graduating with her bachelor's degree from college this weekend. And then once I got it, I just left. But then I drove down to LA to get my first two shots at the parking lot of USC and drove myself there and back. So I'm pretty sure I was going to be okay to drive home the 3 minutes from the Rite Aid around the corner from my house. So might be a little low energy today, but then again, is your cell phone reception better? No.
Now that you're fully 5G compatible.
Not yet. I think it still takes 2 weeks to really kind of secure, is what they say, you know. So ask me again in 2 weeks, and we'll see if that's better. If I get interference on the microphone or anything. So I'm also waiting for my superpowers. I have not hulked out yet. I cannot. Well, nope, can't stick to walls. Don't seem to be able to fly. I would try to read minds, but the only mind I'm in current contact with is, of course, Kyle, and all he ever thinks about is pizza anyway. So,
you know, it's funny that we're talking about the character we're talking about. If you go blind and develop an ability to fight after getting this shot, because you're turning into Daredevil and we're talking about Daredevil, I might just like switch over my religion to whatever worshiping Dan Wickline.
All right. Well, I will keep that in mind and let you know if that happens. You know, you'll be the first to know because I'll be like, well, it's hard for me to do the show blind. I can't see the keys yet. I haven't got my Braille keyboard. Yeah. So we are going to talk about Daredevil today and the announcement that the Netflix character will be coming into the MCU or some form of that. But before we do, I just want to say I have watched the latest Hawkeye. We will do our spoiler conversation about it tomorrow. But I've got to fess up that some of my wild speculation has already been blown out of the water. If you watched the show yesterday, let me just say that Jack and Clint do not appear to know each other. Yelena isn't the one that spoils Ronan or Hawkeye being Ronan to Kate. And there was one other one that I just totally screwed the pooch on. Well, I didn't think she'd come in attacking, but you'll have to see how she enters. But yeah, so a few of them are already thrown out the window, but I've got a really good new one involving the Watch. Now, oh, that was the other thing is the Watch I said was Stark Tech. We find out that it's not Stark Tech. It's tied to somebody whose identity would get revealed if it gets out there. But that opens up a whole new line of thought of who that Watch might actually be. And it might come, if my thinking is right, there may be another Marvel comic character that's been hiding in plain sight for the last 10 years. That's going to be an interesting book. But again, tomorrow. So we'll do with that tomorrow. Kyle, you can come back. So, done talking about Hawkeye. Now on to Daredevil. All right. So, let's start with the initial news that, well, actually, we should probably backtrack. There has been, since, well, God, I really should go back to the history. While Marvel was growing, Disney, there was also Ike Perlman and the Marvel Entertainment Group, the guys that do the comics, and they were behind the Marvel television shows, and where Marvel Studios, the film people, were behind like Agent Carter. That was a show they considered canon. Everything that Marvel Television did, which was Jeff Loeb run, there was a kind of a war between the two, fighting for characters and whatnot. And whatever, and what Marvel Television did, Marvel Studios tended to just ignore. So that's why you see a lot of references in like the Netflix series and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to the MCU, but very few, if none, if no references back. You know, nobody. They talk about the guy with the flag guy, or the big green guy, or the guy with the hammer. But they would say stuff like that in the Netflix series. But at no point did you hear about the Devil of Hell's Kitchen in one of the like in Spider-Man No Way Home. Even though they would be kind of the same grounded level characters, it never came up. So, and that was partly due by this feud between Marvel Studios and Marvel. I don't want to say Marvel Television because it was higher up. It was really Ike Perlman and the Marvel Entertainment Group, and there's that amazing book. I keep going back to it, The Story of Marvel Studios, because it really does cover a lot of the early years and how things changed. Well, when Disney announced they were going to do Disney Plus, they were going to do their own streaming service, Netflix went, hey, hang on a second. Why would we carry your shows when you're going to be a competitor for us? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So Netflix wasn't happy about it. So they decided to pull the plug on the Marvel / Netflix series. And there were, well, we think of the base four. We think of Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. But there was 6, because you also have to count the Defenders, the group up series that they all led into. And you have to remember that the Punisher got his own spinoff. So there were these 6 series that had this really tight continuity between each other. And they were always supposed to be part of the MCU from Marvel Television's point of view. Marvel Studios kind of went la, 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 la. Well, eventually power plays were made, and the last man standing, of course, was Kevin Feige. Marvel Television was disbanded. Everything went under Marvel Studios. Kevin Feige even has control over the comics now, which could explain some of the changes that are being made. But at the time, people were asking Kevin about the Netflix characters, which ones he liked, which one, was there any chance they'd come in? And Kevin is great in the sense that he only tells you what he wants to tell you. And he never says no unless it's a hard no. There's no, well, I don't think we're going to do that. He'll dance around it. He'll say something to the effect of, well, we might get to that. Anything is possible. And when it came to the Netflix series, he talked about how much he liked Charlie Cox's portrayal as Matt Murdock / Daredevil, Krysten Ritter's portrayal of Jessica Jones, Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal of Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. the Kingpin, and John Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher. Now, that's only 4 of the characters. I mean, again, 6 series. You've got Luke Cage by Mike Colter. You got Iron Fist by Finn Jones. And you have all these great supporting characters that you could throw in there, too. You got the Madame Gao. You've got Stick by Scott Glenn. How could you not want Scott Glenn to come back as Stick? Well, they killed him. But Elodie Young as Elektra. You've got... you had the microchip character introduced. You had Patsy Walker, Hellcat. They introduced a lot of characters. And then you had Iron Fist, you had Colleen Wing, you had Misty Knight. So you had this ton of characters. Rosario Dawson as Claire, the night nurse. I mean, you just had this huge glut of amazing characters over there. And some of them, maybe they weren't the best, but overall, I think the casting of the Netflix series were one of the highlights of it. I mean, they pulled in Mahershala Ali and Mustafa Shakir and Alfre Woodard and all these really great actors for Luke Cage. And they brought in Sigourney Weaver. If you think about it, Sigourney Weaver is if they make those shows canon, then Sigourney Weaver is part of the MCU. And just down the line, they brought in a lot of really talented actors to do these parts. And I can't think of any, short of the casting of Iron Fist, I can't think of anybody's character that people were upset with other than Iron Fist. Mike Colter was most people really liked him as Luke Cage. Krysten Ritter was celebrated as Jessica Jones, and down the line. I mean, there's some really great stuff going on there. But there was also a deal that said that Marvel couldn't touch these characters for 2 years after a series was canceled. That way Netflix could continue running the series. And I believe Netflix actually continues to own the shows, the series. They continue to, they're the exclusive home for those series. So don't think at any point we're going to have the Daredevil series popping up on Disney Plus. I don't see that happening unless Netflix and Disney make a new kind of deal. Then again, Disney may end up just buying Netflix. They do that stuff like that. Actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea to buy Netflix and then merge it and bring their customer base in. Wow. Yeah, that's a huge thought. Never mind. So that's where we were at going into this last year, when a metric ton of rumors started popping up about the Netflix characters. You could even call it a buttload. And by the way, a buttload is a real measurement, unit of measure. It has to do with wine. Look it up. So a buttload of characters started into the MCU, or, talked about as possible into the MCU. And what we heard was, Charlie Cox is going to reprise his role as Matt Murdock in Spider-Man No Way Home. And he's going to pop up in the Jessica Jones series because She-Hulk series, because Jennifer Walters is a lawyer, Matt Murdock is a lawyer. It makes perfect sense. What's her name? Krysten Ritter is going to pop up as Jessica Jones. Maybe she's hired by She-Hulk to investigate something. And then it's just Daredevil's supposed to show up in the new Echo series. Well, there was a rumor that we were going to get an Echo series. Well, now we know that's true. Vincent D'Onofrio is going to show up in Hawkeye, and he'll show up in Echo. And there's even the rumor that John Bernthal will be back as the Punisher. So there's all these rumors that's been flying around. Well, somebody finally sat down recently and asked Kevin Feige about Charlie Cox as Daredevil. And again, Kevin Feige doesn't tell you anything he doesn't want to tell you. The man is better than Natasha Romanoff at keeping secrets. Okay? The guy is phenomenal. He will not slip up. And they asked him, and he said, if you were to see Daredevil in upcoming things, Charlie Cox, yes, would be the actor playing Daredevil. Where we see that, how we see that, when we see that remains to be seen. Now, besides being one of the most clumsy statements I've ever heard in my life, if you were to see Daredevil in upcoming things, Charlie Cox, yes, would be the actor playing Daredevil. That's the sentence he says. But that was probably him thinking on the fly how to phrase everything, because the last thing he wants to do is give away a spoiler. He doesn't want to say, well, yeah, Charlie Cox is going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home. He's going to be Matt Murdock. Maybe he suits up for a minute. Yeah. But at the same time, he also doesn't want to lie. He doesn't want to come out and say, no, Charlie Cox will never be Daredevil again. No. So he's kind of in that interesting point, or that part where he can't tell the whole truth, and he doesn't want to lie. So he's kind of trying to glide in that gray area, and that's what that sentence is doing. Now, that said, unless you have a specific plan for Charlie Cox in the MCU, you don't make that statement. You say, if we get to the character, I would love to revisit things with Charlie to see where he's at. Maybe we can work something out. You say something like that. If you don't have a specific plan for Charlie Cox. Because what happens if, they are talking down the line, there's no specific plan, and they come up with we should do a Daredevil series again. We got the character back. Let's call up Charlie. Oh, Charlie's doing a Broadway production for the next year. Charlie's in a big major motion picture. Charlie just signed on to a new TV series. That's all a possibility. So would that then negate what Feige just said? Would he be lying then? So when he says, if you see Daredevil again, it will be Charlie Cox, and when, where, all that is remains to be seen. Now, so that tells me that we're going to get Charlie Cox again soon. I still think that photo that John Campea posted of Matt Murdock sitting at a table with Tom Holland and Marissa Tomei and Jon Favreau in a scene for Spider-Man No Way Home, I still think that's a real photo. There's a reason they had him pull it down immediately. There's a reason why they were trying to figure out exactly where those photos came from. And it goes along with a something Tom Holland said where he talked about a scene he had filmed where he's sitting around with 3 other actors and talking about being a superhero and what it means. And it sounds like the picture is from that scene, the way he described it. So I am fully of the belief that Charlie Cox we will see him next week in Spider-Man No Way Home, which then explains why Kevin Feige went ahead and said it. Because it's so close, and he doesn't want to outright lie or deceive, but at the same time, he doesn't want to give anything away. So he gives this half answer. But I think it's pretty safe to take from that that's going to be the case, which then makes us go back to all those rumors. And of course, we had last week's episode of Hawkeye, where we are introduced to the character Uncle. And Uncle is a large man in a very nice suit with cufflinks and a large hand that just basically touches young Maya's face. And we find out that he's somehow connected to the Tracksuit Mafia. Well, in the comics, the Tracksuit Mafia work for Wilson Fisk. Maya, when her father dies, is raised by Wilson Fisk. So it makes a lot of sense for Wilson Fisk to show up in Hawkeye and then in Echo as part of the character. So you put that with the fact that they're bringing back Charlie Cox, suddenly the door is open to Vincent D'Onofrio. And D'Onofrio has been posting a lot of weird stuff on Twitter since this all happened. Now, of course, when the official confirmation of Charlie Cox and the MCU came out, Charlie says, so happy for Charlie Cox, or Vincent tweeted, so happy for Charlie Cox. He really deserves this. He's a great actor and wonderful guy. He put so much into playing Daredevil in such a unique way. Love this news. Then he followed it up with, let's not forget about Deborah Ann Wool and the depth she brought to the character of Karen Page, an incredible Marvel character. So here is D'Onofrio celebrating Charlie Cox's return, where again, Feige was just a tiny bit vague. So where everybody else is taking it as definite, there was still some wiggle room. The fact that Vincent D'Onofrio is not doing the wiggle room thing here, he's taking it as a definite, that's a pretty interesting thing. That's a good sign that, again, Charlie Cox is coming back, and there's a good chance that Vincent D'Onofrio is. Plus, he's been posting about the Hawkeye series, about how fun it's going to be and how much he's looking forward to it and stuff like that. So why would he be pushing Hawkeye? He wasn't out pushing WandaVision. He wasn't out pushing Falcon and Winter Soldier, but he's out pushing Hawkeye. So there's nobody in the cast that has worked with before that I'm aware of. Maybe there is, but I haven't had a chance. But yeah, Marvel Studios posted 1 week until we hit the mark. Marvel Studios official on the, and he responded, "This is going to be fun. I love these Marvel series." So again, he's being vague about it, but there's not a whole lot of him hyping up the other Marvel series, where he is definitely hyping up Hawkeye. So again, it feels like we're going in that direction, that there's going to be Vincent D'Onofrio back. Now, there's another interview which is fascinating to me. This has to do with, this was an interview that John Bernthal did with The Hollywood Reporter. Now, the main part of the interview had to do with King Richard, the movie he's in with Will Smith about Venus and Serena Williams. And that's getting a lot of Oscar buzz. It's one of those that debuted on HBO Max and in the theater. So it didn't do great in the box office because of the day and date. But it's getting a lot of critical praise And there's a good chance that Will Smith will get another Oscar nomination. Well, Bernthal was talking about that, but then, of course, they say, they have to ask him about Punisher. It says, now, the question was, Marvel has now opened up the multiverse, so any extension of Marvel can now link up with the MCU, whether that's the Netflix series, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. Do you think your version of Frank Castle would work in a PG-13 action comedy context of the MCU? Which is a really interesting way to put the question. Because, there's an action comedy take to a lot of the MCU, but I don't think that's going to be everything, especially when it comes to the Marvel Studios, the Disney Plus series. Because I think where She-Hulk is probably going to be like Ally McBeal and be just as comedic as it is, as action. I've even heard she breaks the fourth wall in the series, but which would be a great series for Deadpool to pop up in. But I don't look at Moon Knight as being lighthearted. I think Moon Knight is going to be a much more serious series. So it'll still have some humor, but I think it'll be closer to a Netflix series. And I think that's where they're going with here. Now, his response to the question was, that character in particular has real deep meaning for me and resonance in me. He's really in my heart. He's really in my bones. I'm enormously protective of that character. I've said before that there's nothing in the world more important to me than my wife and my kids, only until you understand that kind of love and what it really means to be willing to die for somebody. Do you understand what it would be like if somebody took them from you? That's a road and a darkness and a rage that really scares me and brings me to places that I worked the last 20 years to get away from. So I was really grateful, respectful, and weary of the places where that role took me and the world in which I had to live in. That being said, that's where that character needs to be. It needs to be a level of darkness. I think if there's any let up on the character, you do a disservice to that character, to every iteration of that character, to every comic book that's come before, and to all of the unbelievable fans of the character. This character means so much to people in the military. So, like I said before, it's not about whether you do the character, it's about whether you do it right. And I'm only interested in doing it right. So it sounds like, I think you could read between the lines pretty easily there, that John Bernthal would come back and play the Punisher again, as long as it was done right, that it was done in a serious tone. And that right there, I think, is important because, his Punisher was very serious, as most of the Netflix series were, but there's still the humorous moments. And I think you can play that fine line. Just you tone it down a couple extra notches with Punisher because of how dark it is. But I look at stuff like Hawkeye, which has a lighter tone. It's kind of funnier. But then the most recent episode, it takes a very serious turn in this one. And when you start looking at that, you're like, okay, they can do this. Will they do it for Punisher? So that's 3 of the characters right there that of the 4 that Kevin Feige said that he really loved their performances. So could it be those characters are coming back? Could Krysten Ritter pop up in She-Hulk? Could John Bernthal's Punisher return? Are we going to get Vincent D'Onofrio? I think Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox are a yes. I think the other 2 are likely at this point. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the characters that we haven't been looking at yet. Be right back.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about the Netflix characters that may or may not be returning to the MCU and how that might work out and which characters they should bring back. So we talked already in the first half of the show about what Kevin Feige said about Charlie Cox, how Vincent D'Onofrio has been reacting, and what John Bernthal would want to come back. We're going to move forward, but before we do me a favor. Hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Those things are real important for growing this channel. So if you're liking the content here, you like what you've been seeing, please do those things. Share this with your friends. Let's try to build up a bigger audience, get the conversation bigger, get more voices in here. That's what we want. We want your voice in here as well. So please do that if you can. All right. Also coming up next after the show will be Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. And they got some pretty nice books coming up. There's a remarked copy of Archie #1 done by Ken Hazer. There's a signed copy of Secret Wars #1 by Mike Zeck. And there's also a Steve Orlando signed copy of saw it earlier. It's going to slip my mind now. There's a Steve Orlando signed book too. So if you're looking for Steve Orlando stuff, there you go. I'll remember it, and probably as soon as the show ends, I'll go, oh yeah, it's that. But check out the show. Rex and John will be giving you some awesome deals, and it's Christmas. We're coming up for Christmas. You could get somebody that special gift, that collector in your life. So get them a signed Steve Orlando book or a Mike Zeck book or a remarked Ken Hazer cover of Archie #1. All right. Oh, it's Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter #1 signed by Steve Orlando. That's on the box as well today. So see, I knew I'd remember it just a little better than I thought. Okay, let's take a look at the other characters in Daredevil, because Vincent D'Onofrio did mention Deborah Ann Wool as Karen Page. And you got to kind of look at that threesome. There was Deborah Ann Wool, Charlie Cox, and Eldon Henson. I thought Eldon Henson was a terrific Foggy Nelson. I thought Deborah Ann Wool became a great Karen Page. She was a little iffy in the beginning, but she grew on me quickly. And then also her appearances in the Punisher series, I really like her, and I hope they do bring those characters back. I don't think they need to necessarily acknowledge the events of the series. They could pick it up from where season 3 ended, where they're sitting around. It was kind of a new start anyway. The season ended with Foggy, Karen, and Charlie, or Matt, kind of coming back together as a law firm, which I think would be a great thing. Plus, you've got some other very cool sub-characters. You've got Elodie Young as Elektra. I really like her performance as Elektra. I'd like to see her stick around. She was great at that. Wilson Bethel did a good job as a Bullseye. So, will they keep him? I'd like to see that too. Ayelet Zurer, who played Vanessa, if you're bringing back Vincent D'Onofrio, do you bring back his Vanessa? Seems like a good idea. But you've got some other great actors there too. Like I said, you had Scott Glenn as Stick. You had Joanne Wally as Sister Maggie. Bob Gunton as Leland Oswald, the Owl, or at least the setup for the Owl. It might be his son ends up being the Owl. So, Royce Johnson played Brett Mahoney, and Jeffrey Cantor, who's another great actor, as Mitchell Ellison. So you've got a lot of really good actors. Now, the one thing that disappointed me was how quickly they killed off Ben Urich in the series. I've always thought Ben Urich was a great Daredevil character. I thought Vondi Curtis Hall was doing a great job as the character, but they shook it up and offed him in the first season. So I'd like to see them, if they are going to bring back only a part here, part there, I'd like to see Ben Urich be alive again, but not sure how much of that will happen. One character that popped up in all the series that I would love to see come back is Turk, Rob Moran. I loved how Turk popped up in all the series. I'd love to see him start popping up in Spider-Man, in the other Netflix series. He could pop up in Moon Knight. Turk is just that street-level informant character that could start being used across the MCU like he was across the Netflix shows. So I'd like to see that. Adrian says, DWS is a very informative show. It's just so entertaining, but all that knowledge is very intimidating. Well, thank you, Adrian, and I'm sorry about being intimidating. It's years and years of reading and not having a life. So I don't recommend it. All right. So there's a lot of great characters from the Daredevil series, but you got to remember that those spun off into other things too. Jessica Jones, the Krysten Ritter series was fantastic. And they had some great characters in there as well. You had Carrie-Anne Moss as Jerry Hogarth. Great actor, great character. You had David Tennant as Kilgrave. How cool would it be to see Kilgrave the Purple Man return in the MCU? You had Will Travel as Nuke. Yeah, I don't think he ever got called Nuke in the series, but that's basically his character. Did I say Rachel Taylor as Trish Walker? Eka Darville playing Malcolm was a great supporting character. So you had all that stuff going on. You also had Mike Colter introduced here. So another great set of characters that I could see making the jump to the MCU. Again, how do you not bring David Tennant back if you can? How do you not bring Patsy Walker in? She's such a fun character. And they make references to stuff like the Wizard. The Wizard reference was awesome. The fact that the guy had super speed, but looked like, just a chubby little guy. I loved that. That was great. So I think they could do it. Again, they could do these small, have them be supporting characters in other series and never really have to address everything overall. This could be fallout from what they do with the multiverse, or it could be that these characters were just there and it's a part of the MCU we haven't explored yet. So I think it wouldn't be hard to bring these characters in, but it really comes down to how many of these characters Kevin Feige wants and what their plans are for them, and also whether those actors are still available. Mike Colter is on the TV series Evil now. Finn Jones may be doing something. David Tennant is constantly working. So he's got the new Good Omens season 2 coming up. So maybe you can't bring back those characters. You have to go another direction. So they could piecemeal it some. But I think the more they leave it intact, the better. Because then they don't have to acknowledge the past, but fans can accept it or ignore it if they want. Brian Rivera says, I know it isn't Netflix, but there are several characters in Legion that were great. Yeah, Legion was another one. That was Fox. And I don't know what their plan is for the X characters and the stuff they got from Fox. We know that they're going to do the Fantastic Four at the end of Phase 4. So that's going to be huge. And we know the director on that's the same guy that does the Spider-Man movies. But we really haven't gotten a lot of hints on, there's a rumor that one of the X-Men is going to show up and fight Wanda in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. Is that true? Is that someone through the multiverse? Is that going to be a regular character? Are we going to get... Yeah. There's just so many questions that I kind of think we need to... With the Fox deal and then the multiverse introduction, it really did kind of put everything on the table, and Kevin Feige isn't coming out and explaining a lot. Now, he has said that how it all works will be explained. We will get an answer. So if Charlie Cox shows up as Daredevil, we will get an explanation at some point of how much of that history comes along with them. Did he team up with the rest of the characters and Defenders to go against the Hand? Or, and stop the building, the dinosaur coming to life under the building or whatever that was. With that, so it will be explained to us and we'll get an idea of what has come over and what hasn't. So hopefully we'll get that pretty quickly, but all we've gotten so far is that Kevin Feige says it will all be revealed. Now, the Punisher, of course, was a spin-off of Daredevil. So he started over there, and he, of course, had Deborah Ann Woll in it. But the series introduced some other great characters. You had the FBI agent, Krista Dumont, played by... Floriana Lima played... not Dumont. She played Dumont, but she was the psychiatrist. Dinah Madani, played by Amber Rose Riva, was a great FBI agent. You've got Billy Russo, who ends up being Jigsaw, played by Ben Barnes. Why would you not want to bring Ben Barnes back? Or Josh Stewart as John Pilgrim was another great casting. There was some really, really good roles on there. You had Clancy Brown pop up in a small role, but he was there. He played both in Daredevil, and then he showed up more in the first season. So you had, Curtis Hoyle's character played by Jason R. Moore. You had some really good supporting characters there. Now, again, in part, how much do you want to bring the story over, but also what are the opportunities to use these characters? Are we going to get another Punisher series or a Daredevil series where he needs a supporting cast? Or are they going to be used as supporting characters for a while? Is Matt Murdock only going to be popping up in, the shows that we talked about? Is he only going to be popping up in Echo? Do we need Deborah? Do we need Karen Page and Foggy Nelson? Is he only going to pop up, as a guest in She-Hulk? Well, maybe he needs his law partners, but Does he need a Turk, or does he need, anybody else like that? Will Jerry Hogarth pop up? She's a lawyer. Maybe she goes up against She-Hulk. So it really comes down to where these characters might pop up. Now, eventually, there's always talk about Daredevil getting his own series again. It was a highly rated show on Netflix, and Kevin Feige has said that Daredevil and Iron Fist are two of his favorite characters. Now, we're going to get to Iron Fist in just a minute, but the fact that he didn't mention Finn Jones and Mike Colter in his list of outstanding things, it might be that he didn't like the Luke Cage series and the Iron Fist series. And I get the Iron Fist series. A lot of people didn't like it. Luke Cage, I think a lot of people liked parts of it, but it had some weak moments too. It definitely was Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, all right there at the top. And then the Defenders, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist were down near the bottom, were the bottom half. So I could see them, maybe shying away from that. But Mike Colter, I thought, was a great Luke Cage. He had the look, he had the feel for the character. And he's got the size, the good looks. I could really see him, and there's good chemistry between him and Jessica, which if they go back and follow that, what happens in the books, that could be something they play up big. So that would be interesting to bring those characters back. Now, Iron Fist might be the difference here. Where we left the character, he didn't have the Iron Fist anymore. He had turned it over to Colleen Wing. I know that Jessica Henwick is on Marvel's radar, but the thing is, they actually offered her a role in Shang-Chi. So there's a good chance they're not looking to bring the Iron Fist characters back. And you've got Mahershala Ali in the MCU as Blade now. So him as Cottonmouth would get confusing. So it could be that they're looking at Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Punisher and not the Heroes for Hire guys. That's something completely separate. They're just going to ignore that. And so I think that's where the problem starts coming up. Also, if Kevin Feige is in charge of the comics now, then you've got to take a moment and look and see what's going on in the comics. And you'll notice that there's a new Iron Fist. They've just recently changed the character. It's no longer Danny Rand. It's now an Asian hero. Someone else gets the power, the Iron Fist. And I could see Marvel skipping bringing Danny Rand over, just pretending that's over there, we're good, and bringing in an Asian Iron Fist. That was what a lot of people wanted when the character was first introduced. I know Louis Tan actually wanted the role. He had talked about it. I don't know if he actually auditioned or not. I wasn't sure what they were looking for, but the character's always been Caucasian in the comics. He's been from when he was first made. But, the fact that they're giving it to a new person could be the way around it. They still acknowledge Danny Rand exists. Maybe they make him more of a mentor figure in the same way they did with Hank Pym. Hank is kind of a problematic character when you look at the comics. He's had some mental instability. He's had some abuse issues. He's definitely a problematic character, and they got around that by turning him into a mentor figure instead of, the hero. They brought in Scott Lang, who has been Ant-Man for a long time and has a great backstory. He's the thief that ends up using it, and just it's a really good backstory, and that's how they kind of got around the question of Hank's questionable comic history. I could see them doing something similar with Iron Fist if they bring the character in by using a new version of Iron Fist, like the one they're introducing in the comics. And it's possible that Kevin Feige is the impetus for that change. But you also got to keep in mind that comics do those kind of changes all the frickin' time. They make a new, here's Dick Grayson's now Batman. Oh, nope, Bruce Wayne's back. Ben Reilly's going to be Spider-Man from now on. Oh, nope, Peter Parker's back. Wally West is the new Flash. Oh, wait, we're bringing Barry Allen back. Kyle Rayner is going to be the Green Lantern. Nope, we're going to go ahead and bring back Hal Jordan, Oliver Queen, Connor Hawke. I mean, you can go down the line, especially at DC. They're horrible for that. But rarely, if ever, does the character not revert back to the original at some point. Look at Hawkeye. In the comics, Hawkeye was dead, and Kate Bishop took over the mantle as part of the Young Avengers. And then a few years later, Hawkeye is back. And where he does take the Ronin suit for a while, he ends up Flashpole. Well, you're really pushing this Flashpole thing, aren't you? It's Flash Facts, Kyle, not Flashpole.
Yeah, but then it doesn't work as the North Pole joke.
You're assuming it works with the pole joke.
Oh, they never work. That's part of the problem. That's part of the fun.
Then why do you keep doing them?
Because they're fun. Also, let's get back to, the topic and why Kevin Feige is the worst person on the planet for messing with my heart all the time.
Kevin Feige is not the worst person on the planet. Kevin Feige is taking characters we love and giving us a new spin on them in a new medium. He's giving us a cohesive universe of Marvel characters that we grew up with. And the fact that, if you would have told 7-year-old me that one day you'd see Captain America and Iron Fist and Daredevil and all these characters in live action, and they'd be the biggest movies in the world and the biggest TV series, my little 7-year-old mind would have been blown. Because all I had was Adam West Batman. So, no. And I always go back to something I heard Todd McFarlane say at a convention when somebody asked him, this was years ago when Spawn was first getting started. I've told Kyle this, but he kind of brought this up. Somebody asked him why the movie version of Spawn was different from both the comic version and the animated series version. And he said, well, why would you want it to be the same? The comic stories exist. They're still there. Read them, enjoy them. The movie is going to be someone else's take on the character telling a different story using this creation. The animated series was the same thing. Why would you want it to be a direct adaptation? Now, I can understand a certain amount of wanting it to be an adaptation, but, and I've come across things that I've seen adapted and I don't like the changes they make, but I don't knock them for making changes because they're, if it's a murder mystery, Hush, when Hush got turned into an animated movie, well, they changed up the killer. They changed up the ending, the twist. And they did that so that people who've read the comics would have something different at the end, Now, personally, I don't think it works. I think the original ending was better, but I see why they were doing that. And it's a different medium. It doesn't take away from those comics. They still exist. So I understand being a purist and wanting things to be adapted faithfully, but I think giving them a little leeway and enjoying the story they're telling might, is probably something you should try to do, because these are big budget things. We're getting these amazing movies, and not liking them because they're not exactly what you want them to be is only detrimental to you. Trying to enjoy what they are putting forward, liking a movie for what it is instead of what it isn't, really, it just works out best for you because you're the one spending the money on the movie ticket. So, all right, let me just wrap this up here. We're going to be near the end. So Charlie Cox will be Daredevil again and he will be in the MCU. When that is, Kevin Feige won't say. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Pretty sure it's going to be Spider-Man No Way Home. Vincent D'Onofrio is happy Charlie Cox is getting another chance and thinks Deborah Ann Woll should too. And I'm pretty sure he's going to pop up in Hawkeye next week, as the rumor is there's going to be a huge reveal of a character that will break Twitter for the 5th episode. And since Vincent D'Onofrio is on Twitter and that's where all this stuff comes from, that makes sense. That it's going to break Twitter and not just break the internet. So, all right, guys. Again, please hit the like, subscribe buttons, the thumbs up. That's really appreciated. I will be back tomorrow to talk about the 4th episode of Hawkeye, Partners. Am I right? And lay out clearly which ones of my speculation I got wrong, which ones are still viable, what new ones I have, and who I think the watch belongs to, and everything else Hawkeye tomorrow. Please stay tuned for Rex and John as they do comic collectibles, some great books being offered, and have a great evening, everybody. Good night.